This allegory of the olive tree in Jacob chapter 5, it really gets you thinking.
Yeah, it's a powerful one.
Talking about God's relationship with his people.
Right.
Both the house of Israel and us Gentiles.
Such rich imagery.
Yeah.
Packed with layers, grafting talk of wild and tame branches, this vineyard owner working tirelessly.
Yeah.
It's all pointing to something bigger. You know about God's love, his plan, and a role in it all.
Okay, so we're in Jacob chapter 5.
Okay.
Right off the bat, verse 3. We run into a problem.
Yeah.
The tame olive tree, which represents the house of Israel, it starts to decay.
Right.
I will liken thee, O house of Israel, like unto a tame olive tree, which a man took and nourished in his vineyard, and it grew and waxed old and began to decay.
It's like watching something you've cared for start to wither.
Right.
Verse 4, the master of the vineyard. He sees this happening. He doesn't give up on it. And it came to pass that the master of the vineyard went forth, and he saw that his olive tree began to decay. And he said, I will prune it and dig about it and nourish it, that perhaps it may shoot forth young and tender branches, and it perish not.
This is God actively trying to save his people.
Right.
To help them thrive.
Absolutely.
He's not messing around.
Nope.
He's pruning, digging, nourishing.
That's right.
But then things get really interesting.
Okay.
Verse 7. We see this unexpected solution, grafting branches from a wild olive tree onto the tame one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
This is where the symbolism gets deep.
What?
The wild olive branches, they represent the Gentiles.
Right.
Like you and me being grafted into the covenant. God's extending his blessings beyond the house of Israel.
Wow.
It's about bringing everyone in.
And we see this idea reinforced in verses 8 and 13 and 14.
Yeah.
The scattering of the natural branches represents the scattering of Israel.
Right.
And their eventual gathering. There's this beautiful parallel between what happens to the branches and God's work with his people.
A powerful connection.
Yeah.
It's also remarkable how patient the vineyard owner is.
Oh, yeah?
He grafts those branches
Right.
and then he waits.
He does.
He doesn't expect instant results.
That's a good point.
Look at verse 15.
Okay.
He's nurturing that tree, watching for those grafted branches to bear good fruit.
Right.
And it came to pass that after many years, the Lord of the vineyard did come and visit his vineyard.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that God's work takes time.
It does.
It unfolds gradually.
And it's not just about waiting, it's about active involvement.
Right.
Verses 19 through 24 show the vineyard owner purposefully planting those natural branches in different spots. Some in good soil, some in poor soil. He's spreading things out, giving everyone a chance.
That's a powerful image of the gospel being spread to all corners of the world, regardless of circumstances. It's a reminder that God's love, his message, it's not exclusive.
Right.
It's for everyone, no matter where they come from or what challenges they face.
But here's where it gets tricky.
Okay.
Verse 25.
Yeah.
We see that even some of the trees planted in good soil end up producing a mix of good and wild fruit.
Interesting.
And in the space of not many years, the branches also of the wild olives did grow and thrive exceedingly. For the Lord of the vineyard did nourish them exceedingly.
Okay.
Why would that happen? What's going on there?
This speaks to something profound about choice.
Okay.
Remember, God gives us agency.
He does.
Even when we have every advantage, even when we're planted in good soil, we still have the freedom to choose our path.
Right.
Some embrace the nourishment, the care, and they bear good fruit.
Yeah.
Others, even with the same opportunities, make different choices. And the results are different.
So it's not just about God's effort.
Right.
It's about our response to that effort.
Exactly. God provides the conditions for growth. But ultimately, it's our choices, our actions that determine the kind of fruit we bear.
And that brings us to one of the most poignant parts of the allegory.
Okay.
The Lord of the vineyard weeping over his corrupted vineyard.
Right.
Verse 41. And when the Lord of the vineyard saw it, he wept because of the affliction of his vineyard.
Oh, wow.
Despite all his efforts, all his care, things haven't turned out the way he hoped.
It's a powerful image of God's sorrow.
It is.
It's not just disappointment.
Right.
It's genuine heartache when we turn away from him, when we make choices that lead to pain and separation.
Yeah.
His love is so profound that our choices actually cause him pain.
But God's not passive, is he?
Right.
He doesn't just grieve, he acts.
That's right.
He has this servant and he starts asking him questions.
Okay.
Verse 48. And he said unto the servant, What shall we do unto the tree? that I may preserve again good fruit thereof unto mine own self.
He's seeking counsel, trying to figure out what to do next.
And the servant in verse 49 responds,
Yeah.
Lord, behold, because thou didst dig about it, and didst nourish it, it hath brought forth much fruit. And of the fruit thou hast laid up much, which is good. It's like they're taking stock of the situation,
Yeah.
recognizing that even in the midst of corruption, there's still some good to be salvaged.
That's a good point.
And then the servant asks this really interesting question
Okay.
in verse 48. And because of the change of the branches, that the good are turned into bad and the bad into good, behold, lookest thou not at the height of the vineyard?
Interesting.
He's pointing to something beyond just the individual branches.
Right.
He's talking about the overall structure, the loftiness of the vineyard.
Yeah.
What's he getting at?
He's hinting at the corrupting influence of pride, of worldly ambition. It's like he's saying, look, the problem isn't just with individual trees, it's with the whole system. We've become too focused on appearances, on outward success.
Yeah.
And we've lost sight of what truly matters. It's a warning about the dangers of pride and worldliness, choking out the goodness of the gospel.
So how does the vineyard owner respond to that? What's his next move?
He's got a plan, and it involves going back to the roots.
Okay.
Literally. Verses 52 through 54.
Right.
Wherefore, let us take of the branches of these which I have planted in the nethermost parts of my vineyard, and let us graft them into the tree from whence they came, and let us pluck from the tree those branches whose fruit is most bitter, and graft in the natural branches of the tree in the stead thereof. And we will pluck from the wild olive tree those branches which are most bitter, and we will graft them into the natural tree. And the branches of the natural tree will we graft into the wild olive tree.
Wow.
He's talking about grafting the natural branches, those representing the house of Israel, back onto the original tree.
He's trying to restore things to their original state, to bring things back into balance.
Yeah, it's about bringing the covenant people back to their rightful place, reconnecting them to the source of their strength and blessing.
Right.
It's a symbol of God's ongoing efforts to gather Israel to bring his people back to him.
And as we see in verses 57 through 66, this restoration process isn't quick or easy.
No, it's not.
It's described as this meticulous, careful process requiring patience and constant care. And it came to pass that the Lord of the vineyard said unto one of his servants, Go to and pluck the branches from a wild olive tree, which the tree also of the natural fruit may have nourishment.
This emphasizes that God's work is often a process of refinement.
It is.
It takes time, there are setbacks, but he never gives up.
That's right.
He keeps working, keeps pruning, keeps nourishing until the vineyard is restored to its intended beauty. And this whole process, it highlights something crucial about God's character. He never forces righteousness on us.
Right.
He gives us agency, the ability to choose. And with that comes the potential to make choices that lead to spiritual decay, even after experiencing his blessings.
So even after all the grafting, all that effort to nourish and prune, the trees can still choose to produce bad fruit.
That's right.
That's kind of a tough pill to swallow.
It is, and the allegory doesn't shy away from that reality.
Right.
It's a tough truth, but there it is in verse 39.
Okay.
Even the natural branches, the ones representing the house of Israel, they become corrupt too.
Wow.
And it came to pass that they went down into the nethermost parts of the vineyard, and it came to pass that they beheld that the fruit of the natural branches had become corrupt also, yea, the first and the second and also the last, and they had all become corrupt.
So they all become corrupt.
It's a reminder that none of us are immune to the pull of the world, to those temptations that can lead us astray.
It's like that saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink.
Right.
Even with God's grace, even with all the tools and nourishment he provides, we still have that ultimate choice to make.
That's where the call to vigilance comes in. It's not a one-time decision, this choosing the right path.
Right.
It's something we have to actively engage in day after day.
Yeah.
We have to continually nourish our faith, just like the vineyard owner keeps tending to his trees.
So we have to be willing to prune away those unhealthy habits.
That's right.
Those influences that can drag us down.
Absolutely.
We have to stay rooted in the gospel, in those principles that bring forth good fruit.
Absolutely. And that's where the beauty of the allegory really shines through.
Right.
Because even in the face of this widespread corruption, God doesn't give up.
Right.
His love persists.
He's always got a plan.
Right? Exactly.
He's not just going to throw in the towel and say, well, that's it, I'm done.
Look at verses 52 through 54.
Okay.
Even when things look bleak, he's already outlining a plan for restoration. Wherefore, let us take of the branches of these, which I have planted in the nethermost parts of my vineyard, and let us graft them into the tree from whence they came, and let us pluck from the tree those branches whose fruit is most bitter, and graft in the natural branches of the tree in the stead thereof.
He's talking about grafting again, about pruning, about continuing that process of nourishment.
He's so intentional about it, too.
Right.
Notice how he doesn't just randomly graft branches.
Yeah.
He carefully selects and places them, understanding the specific needs of each tree.
Wow.
Verse 57.
Okay.
And it came to pass that the Lord of the vineyard said unto one of his servants, Go to and pluck the branches from a wild olive tree, which the tree also of the natural fruit may have nourishment.
That speaks to me about the individualized attention God gives to each of us in our spiritual progression.
It's like he knows us intimately,
Yeah.
knows exactly what we need, and he tailors his approach to our unique circumstances.
It's a beautiful testament to his love and his care for each one of us.
And this plan, it also emphasizes the interconnectedness of the vineyard.
Okay.
It's not just about saving individual trees.
Right.
It's about restoring the whole vineyard to its original beauty.
There's that element of community, right?
Yeah.
We're not meant to be isolated in our spiritual journeys.
No.
We need each other.
Mm-hmm.
We're called to support and strengthen one another.
We're all part of this larger tapestry, this vineyard that God is tending to. And in verses 61 and 62, there's a direct call to action for all of us.
Okay.
It's an invitation to become co-laborers with him in this work of restoration.
He's saying, come work with me.
Wherefore, go to and call servants, that we may labor diligently with our might in the vineyard, that we may prepare the way, that I may bring forth again the natural fruit, which natural fruit is good and the most precious above all other fruit.
Let's do this together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he even acknowledges that it's not going to be easy.
Right.
Verse 62, Wherefore let us go to and labor with our might this last time. For behold, the end draweth nigh, and this is for the last time that I shall prune my vineyard.
There's a sense of urgency there.
Yeah.
A recognition that the work ahead is challenging, but also incredibly important.
And it's not just about physical labor, right?
Right.
It's about spiritual effort. It's about striving to live the gospel, to share it with others, to contribute to the building of Zion.
It's about aligning our lives with God's will, with his plan for this vineyard we're all a part of. And the allegory is clear that this work is going to require dedication, perseverance.
It is.
It's not always going to be smooth sailing.
Right.
There will be challenges, setbacks, times when we question if our efforts are even making a difference.
But that's where faith comes in.
Yeah.
We have to trust in God's timing, trust in his plan. Verses 71 and 72 reiterate that message of dedicated labor and the joy that comes with it. And the Lord of the vineyard said unto them, Go to and labor in the vineyard with your might.
We're called to labor diligently with our might, to not grow weary in doing good.
And the promise is there in verse 72.
Okay.
And if ye labor with your might with me, ye shall have joy in the fruit which I shall lay up unto myself against the time which will soon come.
It's a promise of shared joy, of experiencing the fulfillment that comes from working alongside God and his grand design.
It's not just about obeying his commands.
Right.
It's about sharing in his joy, about being part of something bigger than ourselves.
Right.
It's about seeing this vineyard flourish, seeing it produce the abundant fruit that he intended from the beginning. And there's something so inspiring about the image presented in verse 72.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just us toiling away on our own.
Right.
It's God laboring alongside us.
Right.
And it came to pass that the servants did go and labor with their mights, and the Lord of the vineyard labored also with them, and they did obey the commandments of the Lord of the vineyard in all things.
He's not just giving orders.
Right.
He's rolling up his sleeves and working right there beside us. He's providing guidance, strength, encouragement.
That's right.
He shares in our burdens, and he rejoices in our triumphs.
Absolutely.
What a beautiful thought.
In all that labor, all that dedication, it leads to something beautiful.
Yeah.
We see it in verses 73 and 74, this incredible description of the vineyard's restoration. And there began to be the natural fruit again in the vineyard, and the natural branches began to grow and thrive exceedingly, and the wild branches began to be plucked off and to be cast away, and they did keep the root and the top thereof equal according to the strength thereof. And thus they labored with all diligence according to the commandments of the Lord of the vineyard, even until the bad had been cast away out of the vineyard, and the Lord had preserved unto himself that the trees had become again the natural fruit, and they became like unto one body, and the fruits were equal. And the Lord of the vineyard had preserved unto himself the natural fruit, which was most precious unto him from the beginning.
It's like watching a time lapse of a garden coming back to life.
Right.
The trees are unified, they're bearing good fruit, and you can almost feel the joy radiating from the Lord of the vineyard.
Yeah.
He's so pleased with what they've accomplished together.
And he expresses that joy explicitly in verses 75 and 76. He calls his servants together and he says, "Behold, for this last time have we nourished my vineyard, and thou beholdest that I have done according to my will. And I have preserved the natural fruit, that it is good, even like as it was in the beginning."
He's not just acknowledging their work.
Right.
He's inviting them to share in his satisfaction, his delight in seeing this restoration come to fruition.
"And blessed art thou, for because ye have been diligent in laboring with me in my vineyard, and have kept my commandments, and have brought unto me again the natural fruit, that my vineyard is no more corrupted, and the bad is cast away. Behold, ye shall have joy with me because of the fruit of my vineyard."
Those words are so powerful.
They
speak to the very heart of what it means to be in a relationship with God.
That's right.
It's not just about obedience.
Right.
It's about shared purpose, shared joy.
It's about working together towards something beautiful, something lasting.
And the blessings, they go beyond just that feeling of accomplishment. The allegory points to something deeper, something eternal.
"For behold, for a long time will I lay up of the fruit of my vineyard unto my own self against the season, which speedily cometh. And for the last time have I nourished my vineyard, and pruned it, and dug about it, and dunged it. Wherefore I will lay up unto mine own self of the fruit for a long time, according to that which I have spoken."
He's talking about the fruits of righteousness.
Right.
The kind of harvest that endures beyond this mortal life. It's a promise of eternal reward for those who labor faithfully in his vineyard.
Absolutely.
But then just when you think it's all wrapped up, there's this little twist
Okay.
in verse 77.
Right.
"And when the time cometh that evil fruit shall again come into my vineyard, then will I cause the good and the bad to be gathered. And the good will I preserve unto myself, and the bad will I cast away into its own place. And then cometh the season and the end, and my vineyard will I cause to be burned with fire."
That verse, it brings us back to reality, doesn't it?
It does.
It's a reminder that the battle between good and evil, it's ongoing. It's cyclical. Even after periods of incredible growth, incredible restoration,
Right.
there's always the potential for things to slip back into corruption.
So even though the vineyard is restored in this allegory,
Right.
it's not a permanent state.
That's right.
We can't just rest on our laurels and assume that everything's going to be perfect from here on out.
We have to be diligent.
Right.
It highlights the need for constant vigilance, for that ongoing effort to tend to our spiritual garden,
Right.
to make sure we're producing good fruit.
Yeah.
The natural man is an enemy to God, and he's always lurking, waiting for an opportunity to sow seeds of discord and decay.
It makes you think about the choices we make every day, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The influences we allow into our lives, the thoughts we dwell on,
Right.
the actions we take.
It's a constant process of choosing the good,
It is.
of pruning away the bad.
And that's where the power of this allegory truly lies. It's not just a story about a vineyard.
Yeah.
It's a story about our own hearts, about the ongoing work of cultivating righteousness
Yeah.
within ourselves and within our communities.
It's a reminder that we're all part of this grand tapestry, this vineyard that God is so carefully tending to. And we have a role to play,
We do.
a responsibility to contribute to its beauty, to its abundance.
What a privilege it is to be co-laborers with him in this great work.
It is a privilege.
This allegory has given us a lot to think about.
A lot to ponder.
Thank you for joining us for this discussion.
Thank you.
We hope you'll join us again for more discussions. Don't forget to follow us and subscribe.